Welcome to Splunk Talk, the only podcast that's all Splunk and no junk. We are here for episode 12 of season 2. I am your host, Burch. That is...
I'm Hal.
And today we're going to have Matt Ness and Malcolm Moore come on to have the second in our very important two-part series, Inheriting a Splunk Deployment. But before they join us and before we get into that, Hal, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I mean, this is the first episode recorded after Conf, and that was an experience. That was pretty amazing.
And so anyone who's subscribing, they may not know because we didn't add those episodes to our feed.
We should probably make a snap judgment right this moment. What do we do? Because we could drop them in the feed.
Oh, then that would make this episode 22, not 12, I think.
Okay, so where do we tell people to go to hear what the heck we're talking about in case they happen to miss last week?
I think they can go to YouTube. And
we can send a, So go to Splunk Talk or youtube.com/Splunk Talk, I think. Just Google it. You'll see a playlist on our channel, and it's going to be 9 videos. We did a lot. We recorded a lot of stuff. It was amazing.
Some would say too much.
Some would say too much.
No
you want to break down the sessions we did there?
Definitely. And also, I think, you know what? We might as well add them to the feed when we get a chance because it's easier for people to just skip through them if they don't want to listen to them and to hunt around, right?
Okay. If you're confused, now you're going to know why by listening to us right this moment.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll put them in after this episode.
Oh, that's a smart idea.
We could.
That way people can hear about what it is. But then if their podcast player just goes from the latest to the earliest. We could tease them out, actually, once a week or 2 a week. We could do 2 a week for the next few, actually, because there's 9 of them. There is 9 of them. That's German for no. There are no of them.
9 of them.
9.
Okay, well.
What'd we do?
I guess
we had a very special opportunity to present and interview guests and do color commentary before and after the keynotes and the search party and throughout the conference, really. So we got to talk with people. I'm not going to attempt to try to remember everyone we talked to, but we got to talk to people who are not at the high level, but the actual like individual contributor level, like the people really.
They like peons? I mean, what were you trying to imply there?
I'm trying to imply that the people higher up tend to have more of like the, larger vision and like people that listen to this, the audience that listens to this is probably more like,
they're like,
cool.
What am I going to do with that thing that you just kind of told me the high level of?
Yeah, make it real for me. Yeah, so we talked to those people, the ones that make it real.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, it was great. I was exhausted after that.
I had intended to take in a handful of sessions, and I did not.
You did not?
I mean, I watched the keynotes and a little bit of the search party with Gwen Stefani. That's it. I didn't get any of the sessions in. Which is like a normal conf for me, actually.
Yeah. Well, it took me until like midway through the second day to realize that there was a strategy this year for conf.
Okay.
Because it was virtual, we had featured sessions, which were celebrities, for argument's sake.
Yeah. Tony
Notable
Hawk's, John Romero, Kevin Mitnick, and 3 or 4 others.
Yes. Who were also not just guys. Kerry Washington. And you only mentioned the guys.
I told you I didn't know who she was. That was totally separate from that. Like, and
Hal stopped watching TV in the other woman's 10 years ago.
Like, she's a sommelier.
You can't even say what her job title is. You can't pronounce that.
So
sommelier.
Yeah.
Sommelier. That's the job title.
Okay.
Parna.
What can I say? Look it up. I'm a Tony Hawk fan. I was not a fan of this other. Just the way it worked out.
Aparna. I'm going to look it up later when Hal's talking because out of respect, I want to get everyone's name up there.
That is fair. That is fair. All I'm saying to you is that Tony
You're
Hawk
a horrible
Pro
person.
Skater
I got it.
3 was my jam back in the day. That's all I'm saying. And I missed it. And I still missed that session.
You still missed it?
But you were talking about a strategy, though. Strategy is to watch those, basically.
To watch those, because those, for contract reasons, won't be on the replay.
Yep.
So
I did see Felicia Day on the Dungeons and Data Masters D&D stream.
How
was
that?
Actually kind of neat.
I'm messing with my lighting here.
Every bit as geeky as one would think a live streamed D&D game would be.
What is
then
your
they added Felicia
connection?
Day.
Yeah, how I only know her from Dr. Horrible's sing along blog, but I do know she is a veteran on the webisodes.
Yeah,
domain.
She was. If you want to call it a tuber, she was a tuber before that existed.
A tuber.
So she had Dr. Horrible sing along blog, of course, but also the Guild was a big one.
Yes,
and the Guild was one of the earliest that I recall, anyway, that I was exposed to. Kind of serial shows with a real budget to be made. Right. Yes. Because you had, people doing, what was it? I don't know, like Justin TV, where, here I am going throughout my day, there's that kind of stuff. No. The Guild, had scripts and plans and, locations and, it was like a real show. It wasn't like, AAA title, top tier budget or anything, but it was really well done. With some quality acting, and she was, one of the principals on that. I think she may have been the producer or big part of the production. But anyway, much credit to Felicia Day for that. So yeah, I followed her from that time, and then there's a handful of fantasy sci-fi kind of shows that she had parts in that I would see her now and then. It's like, oh, there's Felicia Day. Oh, there's Felicia Day.
So that was very cool. Felicia Day was there. We also, as Hal mentioned, we had Gwen Stefani at the search party. We had Will Ferrell closing out the conference.
I opened for him.
What? Yes, we did. We did open for him, and Gwen opened for us.
Yes, that was sweet of her. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was very nice of her. It's almost like she didn't even know. Yeah. And then we had I found the guest speakers. We had Kerry Washington, John Romero, Tony Hawk, and Alpana Singh.
Okay.
And
you did great with that.
Yes.
Much better than
I think if I say everyone's names, like Tony Hawk, that's a hard name to say, but if I say it with confidence, no one will know that I'm struggling with it. Because I always want to pronounce it Tony Hawk.
Yeah. No, same.
Yeah.
Same. I was practiced before the episode.
But also before all the keynotes, there was the Jabberwockies, which is a fun word to say. The dance group.
Oh yeah. I enjoyed that. I didn't know who they were.
Yeah.
Questlove.
Questlove. That was a curveball.
Yeah, man. That was awesome.
And the magician and his wife.
There was a magician? I missed this one.
You missed the magician.
Oh, man.
Maybe you got there after and he had already disappeared.
Maybe.
I wrote it down and I forget his name, but he was great. Okay. It was very, very cool. It made me kind of think they just like photoshopped it or like Adobe premiered it or something.
I see.
Yes.
Because people do tricks now. You just don't know what's real.
Yeah.
Have you ever looked at some of the deep fake videos and kind of what's in that area?
No, I don't want my childhood to be sullied.
Yeah, probably was.
Yeah. So we have our guests joining us in a moment. I hope
they're not here, so we should probably stall.
Let's stall. Let's talk about the Conf Online. So featured speakers. That was the best place to go. Because those will not be replayed. But then all the Conf breakouts, even though you miss them, you can catch them at Conf Online. So conf.splunk.com and watch the replays there.
So that's always been there. The concept of this has been there for a few years now. The difference here is that they're there instantly right now. There's no delay. And
are they up already?
Everybody is. Oh, I assume that we were just sending people to the same Conf website and that you logged in that way. I could be wrong. So
Conf Online,
just correct
I don't know.
myself. I didn't think it was going to be on the Conf Online site. It would be instead on the same site that we just experienced last week.
Yes. So conf.splunk.com, if you go under watch.conf online, you can see the 20 conf 20 sessions already.
Yeah.
They're ready for replay.
Yeah. That's what I meant.
Yes.
You just go to watch. You just click on watch. I didn't know that part, but
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, very cool.
So go forth and watch them.
Yeah. So Matt Ness is here, and we've got Malcolm Moore here. So why don't we bring in our friends?
Are they in the waiting room?
They're in the wings. Yeah.
Okay.
Joining.
Dramatic pause.
Drum roll. And
I see people.
we've got video. We've got some audio.
Oh, that's two of them.
We've got two friendly faces.
I have not seen these faces in a long time. What's up, Matt? Malcolm. It's been a long time.
Yeah, it has. It has been a minute, hasn't it?
Yeah. So we should probably, what do you think? Have our guests, introduce themselves. We could probably do that.
Yeah. So we were before you joined, we were just schmoozing about our experience at Conf, and we talked about the fact that this is our second in our second of a series of 2 podcast episodes about inheriting a Splunk deployment. And we've got some very, very special guests because you guys go way back on this and have some historical info. So why don't we start? We'll just go left to right on my screen here.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
No offense, Malcolm, but do put you in the bottom right-hand corner. So
next time I'll go with the Aramaic and Hebrew languages and go right to left. But okay. Matt, why don't you guys tell us just who you are, what your current job function is, and how do you relate back to that inherit a Splunk deployment manual?
Sure. Well, so I'm a principal technical writer on the doc team for Splunk, and let's see. If we're talking about, I've been with the company for a long time, so
don't be shy.
We're coming up on 12 years.
Wow.
So yeah. So in terms of like all company seniority, I think I'm 21 now, something like that. Cool. There's actually a list people are keeping.
Yeah. Now I gotta go check mine.
Yeah, I was 23 for a long time, but a couple people left, I think. I could be wrong. I don't actually keep meticulous track of that, but it's around. But yeah, so I've seen a few things over the years and learned a few things. But anyway, the manual came about maybe around 2016, 2017. And we'd been around for a while as a company, but in our early days, we were focusing mainly on kind of putting Splunk implementations together by scratch. Our docs were all about sort of the soup to nuts, how to do things with, how to build something out of nothing.
Because at the time, all of our customers were net new customers.
Right. But increasingly, we were being approached by people at Conf and outside of Conf who were saying, hey, I inherited this mess and I need someone to help me straighten it out. And your docs are great, but they're not really helping me figure out what to do with this crazy situation. And so our fearless leader, Chris Gales, basically put out this challenge to the doc team to put some time aside to create a manual that was specifically for this use case, more or less. So a bunch of us writers got together and sort of like figured out like what we knew and what we could bring to the table. And we all contributed different aspects of information to it.
Awesome. Very cool.
So let's roll to Malcolm and kind of get your story, Malcolm.
Hey, yeah. So I'm also a principal technical writer. I have been here also a long time.
How long?
10 years.
Nice.
Newbie.
Yeah.
Usually the meetings that you're in, the only person that's going to be older than you is going to be Matt.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yep.
And so, I mean, like Matt said, he got, or Chris Gales put this out as, I think it was a Hack Week project.
Might have been.
Yeah, and so we all sat in the room and said, yeah, we're getting a lot of these requests to talk about like how to deal with an inherited deployment. And so we all took bits of it and put together some copy, and then we all tied it together, and that's what you see in the docs now is the work of about a dozen and a half people.
Wow. So what was the how did you research? What was the the kind of the data gathering process for this, and which might be wider for any you can answer that for anything in docs, but specifically this book.
So for the material that I worked on, I did a lot of the topology stuff. I did the diagrams of the deployments and stuff, and so it was just basically looking on Splunk answers. Reviewing the existing documentation that we had, looking at people ask questions, about how these things are laid out, what ports need to be used, or what ports need to be opened up and stuff like that. So yeah.
And Malcolm, had you before that okay? So first off, it was a Hack Week project. I want to hear what is. I think it's the first time we've talked about Hack Week.
Yeah, so we haven't before, so we should probably call that out.
Let's hear what that's about. And then the other thing is, it almost sounds like the Avengers working on this, because it's like everyone who's been working on other manuals and bringing their subject matter expertise is now contributing the relevant subset to this new manual. So tell us, I'd love to hear about Hack Week and what are your superpowers?
Oh goodness!
I know what one of Malcolm's is.
You have all day for that.
I will out him.
No, but they have always talked about Hack Week. The engineering teams have always talked about Hack Week when they just get together and they just work on stuff, and there's no real set timeline or anything, or set date or set project. You just want to see what you can do and put something together. And so we took that sort of rubric and worked on this manual. We all decided to pull together our different expertise and start writing copy.
So let's get into the expertise. I was going to say, Malcolm, I know you've done a lot on the Windows side.
Do you have capacity to tell us about any of the manuals you've worked on?
Oh my God. I've worked on pretty much every manual in the doc set. I started out with Windows, and I'm still mostly the Windows guy. But it's kind of been passed on to a couple other people. I've worked on capacity planning. I've worked on installation. I've worked on getting data in, and I still do. I work in the security manual. I work in. I did a little bit of work on ITSI, ITSI.
When you say security, are you talking about enterprise security or hardening your Splunk deployment?
The securing the Splunk platform, it's called.
Secure. Thank you.
Enterprise and
you would know.
Yeah.
So who can we blame?
Windows infrastructure, the Unix app, all that stuff.
What about you, Matt?
I guess. Well, first off, I when I joined the company, there were only two manuals: user and admin.
and what product?
And just one product.
For like 8 months.
3 forwarders.
So all the manuals you see for Enterprise and Enterprise Cloud basically came out of those two, and then proliferated. And I've kind of generally been stuck with the. Not stuck with. I don't know if I want to put it that way, but I've been with the Enterprise product for most of my time at Splunk. I did actually write the very first draft of the Enterprise Security Manual back when it was just a pamphlet, more or less. But it's of course gone in a lot of directions since then. But I mostly kind of focus on sort of search time stuff. So the Knowledge Manager Manual belonged to me. I also have a lot to do with things like the Alerting Manual and Reporting Manual. And these days I've been focused a lot on the metrics stuff, which is sort of a whole. That's metrics is kind of like it's index. It's ingest through search. So there's a lot going on there.
So just to clarify some terminology, when our friends here talk about manuals, so if you go to docs.splunk.com and correct me if I'm wrong, the major items listed there are products. And then within a product, you might click in and see a number of different manuals. So if you click into Splunk Enterprise, you'll see actually tabs. There's so many manuals.
Yep.
And so those are what we're talking about when we say manuals versus like product, right? So enterprise security now has like user, admin, and all these other ones.
Right. Yeah. And the thing with enterprise itself and enterprise cloud is those two core products are so large that they have entire universes of manuals within them right now. So,
I mean, there was one time at which you could read the whole of it and kind of keep it all in your head. I don't. That's got to be tough now. I mean, when I started in 2012, at some point in that year, probably the first few months, I read the whole thing, and that was what I needed to do to get started. So what I did.
I had like a 2-hour flight to Tampa or something, and I had printed out the entire admin manual because it was small enough to be printed. It was still big, but sat on a plane and read the whole thing.
Yeah. I don't know if I can imagine doing that.
It's too big now.
Yeah. You still can print. It's like a PDF button on all of our docs, but I don't know how many people still take advantage of that. But yeah,
we probably have the answer to that question in Splunk. Somewhere there's a referrer. There's a weblog with a referrer link to that button.
Yeah,
I'm sure we have telemetry on it.
Yep.
But
I was going to ask, are there parts of the, I mean, if you know something, you can jump in and you can just quickly get something done, as opposed to if it's an area that you don't know or it's something you haven't touched in a long time, you've got to really work yourself back up to it. So is there, like, how do you, you've got, it's, I guess it's kind of like a programmer, writing code too, in the same sense. You don't want to go in and touch something until you know where all the pieces are. How do you do that when it's, something that hasn't been touched in a month or a year? You
mean in terms of documentation? Well, you move carefully, I guess. I mean, some of it is just kind of researching sort of where things are at. And talking to the current subject matter experts on that stuff. Like, I'm always looking at old docs, for example, and kind of going, are these still true? Like, where I'm dealing right now with, I've been dealing over the last few days with lookup stuff. And our lookup docs, I was looking at some of my old lookup topics in the knowledge management manual and realizing I don't think all of these instructions for what directories to put, for example, CSV lookup files in, they seem not right, So I was like asking other.
So you can't go in and make a quick fix. You're like, wow, this is a bit of a bird's nest.
Yeah. Yeah, I went and asked my lookup guy, Jay Pathak, what is going on with exactly where, for example, a lookup file when you upload it through the UI goes, because we were saying three different places, and he got back to me. I mean, I'm sure it helps sometimes to have people that can just give you a quick answer rather than going in and testing and checking and all that stuff.
But what you guys produce, it has to be authoritative. So sometimes you're going to be getting in and doing the thing in order to understand it enough to document it, right?
Right. Yeah. So we do a lot of testing of the functionality that we're working with and seeing where it goes. But sometimes there's stuff that's code level and I'm not always sure like exactly what goes on. Like, I will talk to my colleagues in the development side to say, to validate that, like, what we say about how a conf file setting works the way that it says it works. And that can be tricky, there's been a lot of, we've had, sometimes you'll end up going through lots of iterations with development to get certain things right. And then you'll find out later on down the line that we were wrong. And that's another nice thing about our docs is that all of our documentation pages have feedback sections down at the bottom, and we get customer feedback all the time where people say, hey, this is not correct, this is this is great, but this is you missed something here, or here's an example that might be better. And we actually get a lot of feedback from you guys on the docs, so and we really appreciate it.
I've sent a lot of those in over the years.
We have our ticketing system, and whenever somebody sends feedback, we get a ticket automatically created so we can go investigate, communicate with the person who sent the ticket. If it's internal, obviously they get a direct feedback in the ticket. If not, if it's external, then we just send them email. And it's pretty great.
I think that was one of the things that was so stopping for me. Like, it made me stop and notice Splunk as a company is when I first started reading the docs, and on the bottom, I think I asked a clarifying question or I sent in feedback, and maybe less than 24 hours later, I got a personalized response. And I'm used to big companies, and there's no form to provide feedback, and you have to go through your account team or support. And even if you do, you might never hear back. And I was like, wow, this company is so cool.
I know I had the same impression, and it hasn't changed. It's still that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's actually a big deal.
So
we take pride in that.
Oh, sorry. Customers, when we are when our engineers are building things, we also advocate for our customers at that point too. So to help, as we're doing the research for writing stuff, we'll talk with engineers as they're building the products and stuff and say, hey, maybe we could fix this up so it's a little bit easier for customers to access, and then we won't get negative feedback.
Mm-hmm. So how often are you actually, creating bug reports or enhancement requests throughout, just as a result of your research for documenting? All the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
Wow. Yeah. Cause you're like the first outside. It's almost like a QA. Like, you're the first ones trying to, okay, this is what the workflow should be. Now I'm going to try to put pen to paper, and then wait, but that's not intuitive, or that, doesn't work the way it was supposed to. And I can't write about, that's interesting.
We push it up to the PMs and say, hey, this doesn't look right. And, they'll look at it and say, okay, yeah, you're probably right. We should probably adjust it, or maybe we want to do it this way or whatever. But all the time.
And I bet there's a lot of I was able to document this, but look how convoluted these instructions are. Maybe add something to the roadmap to simplify this workflow, so it's, people are having less trouble with it. It sounds good in their mind, and then you go to try to write the instructions, and it's like, oh boy.
But sometimes we don't have control over that. And I want to give a specific example that I think Malcolm probably will identify with, where why is it so hard? And I know what's going on here. Why is it so hard to configure an SSL certificate to encrypt my Splunk instance?
Oh boy.
I'm not blaming you. I want to know about that process, and that kind of there's only so much you can do, but I don't want to.
Yeah,
let's start with, where do you want that certificate to go, right? Web,
Splunk. And secondly, do you have all the pieces of the certificate so that it actually works? That's the biggest thing. I'm actually in the middle right now of refreshing the Securing the Splunk Platform Manual to address that specific issue. It has been a bugaboo for us for a while, and I'm actually right in the middle of fixing that.
Oh, huzzah.
Yeah.
I did not know that. But I think that this is one of those cases where there's only so much you can do for a process that's complicated for reasons that are not our fault. It's X.509 certificates. I mean, they're just hard to work with.
They are.
And it's been that way since the beginning of time. At least from the
it's actually I guess that's part of what makes them so secure, is you have to get a legit certificate authority to
issue
sign them. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's got all these dependencies that are outside of Splunk.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if we say what we use on, I think we say all the open source libraries that we use on Doc somewhere. So it's, we're using whatever open SSL project, that open source project, and some of these other crypto libraries, we're kind of inheriting the way that those things work.
Yeah.
Swinging back to the inheriting, since you said inheriting,
thank you.
Manual, take us let's go back in time. Take us to when it was first crafted. Were there any? Do you remember any sections that were made it got left on the editing floor, or are there sections that you continue to hear about today? People are like, hey, what now that clustering, multi-site clustering has come out, can you add these topics to the manual? I'm not asking you to commit to any future-facing things. Just give us kind of that behind the scenes view.
So there were a few things that got left on the floor. We were I'm trying to remember when we were putting it out. I think we were trying to do it because Matt, you did your .com talk on it right after it came out, right?
Pretty much right after, yeah.
Yeah. So we were kind of in a push to get it out so that he could do his talk.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there were a couple of things that got left on the floor. We just didn't have enough information to present it as something authoritative, because that is obviously what we try to do. We don't want to just put out stuff that's kind of stuff and doesn't have all the information in it. As far as feedback that we get on it, we get a lot of feedback on the topology stuff. The most read topic in it is about the system health. So determining what the system health is. But
is that a surprise? That's slightly surprising to me, because that's a new feature, relatively speaking.
Yeah. As far as the most read, it's the system health. As far as feedback on it, again, it's the topology stuff. People always ask about where the ports are. There's a couple of Splunk answers questions where people are like, well, what's the port list?
Right. There's a canonical one with it's all color coded and you've got diagrams. It's awesome.
Yeah. So, but that's what we do.
Do you look for areas where, do you look to answers in the community site, kind of first when you're doing some of this research to see, what's the prior art?
Oh yeah.
I think Matt, you were about to toss something out there, and
I just wanted to say that we while the doc team did do the bulk of the writing on the manual, we also went out and sent it out to a bunch of subject matter experts. I can't recall, but I think it's possible that you guys might have been in on the some of those review loops. I'm not sure, but. We sent it out to a bunch of people that we knew, in the SE side of things and elsewhere, to get their comments on it, and that they were pretty instrumental in helping us identify places where we were, where we were forgetting things or missing things, or where their customers were running into problems.
And SC is sales engineering. So those are, if you're working with your account team, you'll have an account representative. But alongside them is a trusty technical advisor called the sales engineer, who will help really provide you that technical proof about what it is you want to do with Splunk and whether or not that's going to be something that's possible. And because they interface so much with our customers, and hear about, well, can it do this? I want to be able to do that. And that they become this incredible rich source of feedback and validation. And that's what Matt was talking about, that, you can bring those minds in to get that sort of validation. So just wanted to translate that for any of our listeners out there. Now you guys also, Matt, you did the conf talk. How many years did that one run for? Because I think they're all expired from Conf Online by now.
Oh,
that's a shame.
Have they? Shoot, yeah. I didn't know. I didn't keep track of how long it ran for.
But you did it more than once, right? More than 1 year?
No, I just did it 1 year. Yeah. Yeah. I should have done it more than once, maybe. But
time to submit it again.
Yeah. Well, I think it might be worth submitting again, but I think it might be interesting to kind of go through and revisit the content of the manual and see where it might need to be updated, especially and given that we're trying to turn our focus a little bit more towards cloud. I'm wondering if there's like specific stuff that cloud users, enterprise cloud users need to consider with, inheriting deployments that we might not be covering.
Or things, that's a really great point, or things that they don't need to consider anymore. So for example, I read the inheriting manual and I learn all about, indexer topology and sends me off to clustering and blah, blah, blah. And it turns out like, you don't have to worry about that in cloud.
Yeah.
It's good to know it. But yeah,
it might not be an issue at all. I don't know. And then another area that I've been working in for the last couple of years that I don't think is represented in there at all is metrics. And there's a lot of getting data in issues around metrics that people might.
So you want to just regale us with a couple of those concerns?
Offhand, I'm not quite sure what I would say. I just know that that there can be some tricky things with, for example, like you might want to know more about how to convert your log data into metrics, for example, or stuff that you might not know. For example, there are things that you can do now that you couldn't do before that might help some people out. Like there's an index, there's a metric, a method of summary indexing into metric indexes that actually creates faster, more performant searches than you would get with a summry index. With an event summary index, a metric summary index is faster and also takes up less space on disk than a.
I didn't actually know about that one. That's good to know.
Yeah. Well, that's something that was invented for cloud and then got released. It's part of the 8.1 release.
Oh, okay.
So the docs are all out there, and I want to do. As the writer for metrics, I want to get. I haven't done this yet, but I want to set up a page that sort of explains like all of these different things that our metric solution has that help people, manage their data and set up faster searches and so forth. Because I don't know that the metrics manual right now really does a good job of explaining that. And I think that might be something that someone who's inheriting a deployment might want to know.
And kind of similar lens to that, when a feature comes out, and then, let's say metrics, came out in 7.0, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And then 7.1, there was a iteration of it, the metrics feature, it was the second version of the metrics feature, and on and on. And now we're on the, whatever you want to call it, version of metrics and then some of those associated features. And if you're not keeping track of those evolutions, you're kind of missing out on, the new capabilities of, even if you're like, oh yeah, of course I got metrics. I know what metrics are. So I feel like there's some sort of a refresh thing that, like, where would you send somebody to answer some of those types of questions?
The release
notes. Yeah.
We talk about what's new and what's changed, all the features that are coming in and features that are going out, and features that have been deprecated and stuff like that. It's all in the release notes.
Glad you said that. That used to be a big part of my job. Every time a new version of Splunk came out, but even before that, when I was in the trenches doing IT, it was like, okay, new version of software, read the release notes. I'm glad y'all continue to put a lot of focus on that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And there's something kind of cool, I find really cool about our release notes. There's the known issues and the fixed issues area, but those are not written into the page, right? Do you think either of you can explain how that works?
We used to have writers that were manually updating the release note, that aspect of the release notes, and it was a tedious process that was prone to error. So a bunch of our best minds came up with a method of automating it. So now it's all done through Jira, really. You go into Jira, you set up a thing saying, what was it? It's like a setting that basically makes it appear in the release notes. And
is it like a label or a tag kind of thing?
It's a label. And then you want to go and change if the title of the ticket, this is for bugs only. And if the title of the bug is something that's kind of inscrutable, we rewrite it so it makes sense in a list of things in the release notes. And then it will automatically go away once it's closed. It'll disappear from the fixed version onwards.
So
that's all automatically generated. All you do is just basically triage the title of the bug and make sure that it makes sense to any reader, basically.
Yeah.
So you take the title that says like Hal screwed up again and make it something a little more appropriate. Right. So when I navigate to the release notes and I see those known issues and fixed issues in this release, that's dynamic, right? Like that's daily dynamic or something like that. That's cool.
Yeah. So it's just the tricky thing now is just kind of making sure that we identify the bugs that need to go in the release notes. And that can sometimes take some time. We don't always catch everything by GA of a given release. I was just identifying things over the late last week that should be in 8.1 the 8.1 release notes that weren't there. Like, engineers saw engineers talking about it. I was like, whoa, that's something that we should be mentioning.
Right.
So, but then it's as easy as just, making a couple changes to a Jira ticket and boom, it's in there.
So why don't we back up a little bit just to think about like the whole purpose of the inherited deployment. And we did ask this question of the team that we had on the last episode here, but like, what are your top tips, or what are the things that people ought to focus on? So we can get a little bit technical and kind of give some some guidance here.
Well, I think Malcolm's probably the expert in some of the early stuff in the manual. And then I should.
I can talk about it. So the first thing you do obviously is you got to assess your topology. You got to see what machines are running what components of Splunk, of the deployment. Take a look at that. Take a look at the configuration files. Take a look at the indexes and the index data. If you have monitoring console, obviously you can use that to glean a lot of information. You want to take a look at the network ports that are running. We obviously have a default list of ports, but it's possible that the Splunk administrator could have configured ports differently, but at least you have an idea of what's going on when you go into it. And then once you have that information and you figure out where things are running, if it's a clustered deployment or not, if it's a distributed deployment, then you can start looking into how the indexes are configured, like summaries and metrics and stuff like that, like what Matt's talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then I wrote a topic that I don't know that people look at that much, which is about once all of that is done, just sort of cleaning up your knowledge object setup and making sure that all of that stuff is working correctly. Which there's a lot of, like, for example, issues with permissions that you can with knowledge object permissions that can be troubling for your users, or orphaned objects, how to find them and how to get rid of them. Mm-hmm. Stuff like that. When you have users leave, for example, the user that you might be replacing, they might have a lot of knowledge objects that were under their name that now are just kind of adrift. And those can cause problems in searches and so forth until you get them reassigned to someone or removed. And there's a lot of other things like that. But if you're dealing with the issues in that final topic, then you're pretty good. You're doing pretty well.
If you made it this far.
Yeah, if you made it this far, then congratulations, basically.
So you mentioned the health check as being one of the most popular sections. Do you want to talk about, I mean, do you get opinionated about the health check, about the monitoring console? Somebody has just inherited something. You probably need to go there to those two places. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so it's obviously it's the number one read page in that manual. And I mean, I don't personally have an opinion on it. I think, obviously if you want to find out what your deployment's doing, that's the first place I'd go. Matt, do you have any thoughts on that?
Not really. It's just kind of an elemental, these days now, it's kind of an elemental place to kind of get started, get the big picture of what's going on with your deployment.
Go ahead.
No, I just going to say I still remember a day when that kind of thing didn't exist, when we had these very bargain basement dashboards to look at to figure out what was going on, with your internal metrics. And
thank you, Octavio. Those are great, but
yeah. Well, Octavio's still heavily involved with this, with the monitoring console. I thank him for everything that he does. Octavio is probably more instrumental into a lot of aspects of how usable our systems are than people realize.
That's going to be a topic I'm thinking, Burch.
I had the same thought. Just Octavio, the topic of Octavio.
Just the Octavio show.
I wonder who we should bring in as a guest, though.
Probably call and see if he has availability.
Yeah.
You should do. Octavio, this is your life, and then just have the rest of us come in and go. I remember when you blah blah blah.
Fun fact: Octavio started a day before me.
No.
Wow.
On July 10th or July 9th, 2010, and I started on July 10th, 2010.
It's like you're twins born just
really
hours apart.
And you look alike, really. That's cool.
From just a complete pivot on topics here, and we can always go back.
Sure.
But were you able to? We're hot off the heels of Conf. We were talking about it before you guys joined. Were you able to catch any of it? Any notable breakout sessions that you saw? Because you have a very unique perspective. You're not sales engineers. You're technical in both consuming and expressing. Even if you're not creating product like bits and so forth.
I unfortunately did not catch any sessions. I'm gonna see what the recordings look like. I had a lot of work that I needed to finish prior to.
Would we have a major release or something?
I had to finish that work. Yeah, so
Shame.
It was definitely different. Like say from last year, where I was there and part of the whole Ask the Experts booth and stuff. It's
those are fun. They had a virtual Ask the Experts. I'm sorry, you go ahead.
No, go ahead. That's fine. I was just going to say it was an interesting. I mean, this whole year was a whole kind of upside down sort of thing.
Really? Why?
That's an interesting way to call it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was interesting in that, yes. So it's virtual, obviously, but the other thing was just that while we had all of the presentations were pre-recorded, or a lot of them were, which meant that people weren't. So I was just. I noticed that in previous years, Conf was if you didn't go, you could depend on it to be a fairly quiet week at the office, and that was not the case this year.
I was wondering where you were going with that.
At all.
Yeah, no. This year everybody was busy. You could tell. I was trying to attend talks for a while, but then I realized that my fellow engineers were not attending talks, and they were very interested in getting feedback from me on this thing or that thing. So I after a while, I had to kind of disengage from the conference because I was just, there was work.
Yeah. It's funny. I know exactly what you're talking about, but Burch and we did not have the same experience at all.
But the one talk I did attend was my colleague and writer, tech writer Sarah Moyer has a really good talk about missing data. What data is missing in your searches? Basically, like how it's kind of about how bias, either your bias or system bias or whatever, can cause you to miss important things in your data, like maybe not capture it in various ways. And it was a very entertaining talk because there's a lot of interesting. She brings in a lot of different examples from the world, basically from outside of Splunk in some cases, and shows how you might be being failing to capture all of the information that you should be capturing.
And her name is spelled Moir. If you go to Conf Online, you can search. You'll find not only that talk, which is titled "What's Missing? Reduce Bias by Addressing Data Gaps in Your Analysis Approach," but also her talks from 2018, including adding and analyzing music data in Splunk, which I think there's been a lot of love for that one.
Yeah. If you go to Conf, you might know her. She's kind of one of these social people that gets around.
Yep.
And probably in a lot of ways is these days kind of I think for some people is the face of the doc team. So, but she deserves that, that attention. She's really good.
And what you mentioned, Malcolm, in being at Conf. What do you do as a doc writer at Conf? Are you wandering around the whole time? And you said ask the experts. Can you tell us about that? Where can we find you?
So you in 2019 you found me at the Ask the Experts booth. I was roaming around, taking questions from customers that walked in and had appointments and stuff. And it was probably one of the best experiences I've had at a .conf. I've only been to 3. And I can say that last year it really, really was great, because just being able to talk with with folks about Splunk, and the various aspects of the product, and being able to answer their questions. That was the crazy thing, was actually being able to answer a lot of their questions on the fly was very, very cool. And just to see the fact that people would come and they would have these questions and you would be able to answer them and they would be really happy. Because typically, you go to a conference and it's like, I'm asking this very technical question, and you'll be like, well, I'm not sure I know the answer to it, but I'll get back to you. You give me your email, right? And being able to actually talk Splunk shop with them was one of the coolest experiences I've had.
I know exactly what you mean. And we did it again this year. It was virtual, but I think probably we could probably go to Leslie and get some stats and help on what was the engagement like. How many people did we help? That kind of thing. That'd be interesting for this virtual year.
Very cool.
One other little kind of fun thing I did for Conf this year was they had a 3-night event. That Dungeons and Data Monsters, where and I was on the 3rd night as a player, and our Splunk community manager Brian Genowin was the dungeon master. It's basically D&D but Splunk. So there were Magic Conf hoodies and what was it? There, we fought some rogue firewalls in one section at the port of what was it, like the Splunk Clouddom in the city of ES and so on. Very nerdy, but fun. It was definitely fun for those of us that are into the game.
Yeah, I was in the live stream for the first night for most of that evening. That was pretty fun.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, any last thoughts or kind of calls to action that you guys want to leave our listeners with?
Sure. I can say if you have any questions about an inherited deployment, obviously the inherited deployment manual is the place to go. We should be able to answer most of them, but if we don't, there is a feedback form on every single page that you fill out and send to us. Give us an email address, and we will get back to you, because that is the thing that we do. We pretty much prioritize feedback over everything else, so you will get a response from somebody.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Some of the feedback documentation things that I've done, I really enjoy getting back to people and kind of fixing people's, issues with the docs, but it's also just fun to, sometimes people discover really interesting things that like we didn't know to, they uncover, ways to improve the docs that we never would have come up with on our own. And as far as the inherited deployment manual goes, that's a great way to also suggest things that we should cover in a new version of the manual.
Yes.
Nice.
So,
and if there are any errors that you see, tell us about them. We'll fix them.
Right.
And when you get an email back from Malcolm or Matt, now you feel like you were talking with a celebrity.
Oh, we'll see.
We'll see about that.
Yikes.
Well, this was a good talk, and it's probably easier than talking about, I don't know, or reference architecture, Malcolm.
Oh goodness, reference.
Oh wow,
that's a lot of fun. I passed that torch on to somebody else, but I remember it fondly.
Oh yeah, that's some good stuff. All right. Well, anything else, Burch?
No, I thank you, Matt. Thank you, Malcolm. It's like M and M, MNMM, initials wise. No, thank you guys for joining us today and closing out this 2-part series. This was wonderful, and
Thank you for having me.
Yep.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Happy Splunking.